Hey, lighten up, jerk!
I'm curious of how did you get into that? Like, what was your cause for wanting to go down that route?
Well, to put it simply, it has to do with my culture, my religion, which is Judaism. And the way I said it is a perfect example of how I feel and how a lot of Jews, especially American Jews, feel about Judaism, in that it's a culture and a race, if you want to call it that first, a nation, a peoplehood first, and then a religion second. And I think that's what makes Judaism unique and both, misunderstood at times and also kind of put on a pedestal at all the other times, in that it is one of the few, if not the only religion, certainly major religions, that really is thought of as a culture first. And that, the large percentage of today's Jews that are in Israel, as of 70 years ago when modern Israel was founded and refounded as a country, the Israelis, Israel is a secular country.
Right.
And,
yeah.
okay, and percentage-wise, I'll estimate around 80% of Israeli Jews are secular, are much more secular than even what we call the Reform American Jews, which means you're pretty much, Jewish by tradition, maybe by culture, by some of the customs you do, but you're not observant.
Right.
Okay, you're not religious,
Right,
you're
right.
not observant. Okay, and
And we'll break that down in a little bit.
Right, and then
Absolutely.
that goes to that saying, it's like, oh well, I'm culturally Jewish.
exactly, and that's not an insult at all. It's not I should say, sometimes it's taken as an insult by the questioner, especially if the questioner is not Jewish. It can sound like a defensive answer, but it's actually really both a traditional and a pride, a very proud way to answer what kind of Jew are you,
Right.
or that question. And so to answer your question more specifically about the youth, how did I get into teaching youth? Because it is one of the biggest pillars of Judaism, one of the most important commandments, and I'll say it that way because it is a commandment. In the Hebrew Bible, which we'll break down more specifically in a little while, think Old Testament, because Hebrew Bible is basically equivalent, synonymous with the Old Testament. One of the most important traditions and important commandments straight out of Deuteronomy, to be specific, is you shall teach them to your children. And the them are the commandments, the laws, the traditions,
Right.
the customs, okay, that you previously saw in the 5 books of Moses.
Right.
Okay, because
That
it's
Israel
Deuteronomy.
failed with many times.
Absolutely. And Israel was destroyed for about the nation of Jews in Israel, in their homeland, was wiped out, more or less, for 2,000 years, and we were spread to the winds. That's what they call the diaspora, meaning
Right.
we were dispersed throughout the entire world, kicked out of Israel in the 1st century AD, and only returned en masse in the 20th century.
Yeah. So, it leads me to the, next question is, for Christians, there's usually a point of because a lot of us are, converts from something, whether it be
Right.
we just, never really were a churchgoer, or, someone used to be a Buddhist or a Satanist or whatever you name it. And there was a moment in time where it's like there was the gospel message, and you heard it, and you believed, and you declared it. I don't know if there's something in that. Obviously, you've been culturally Jewish your whole life, but is there a moment where, because there's a point where you're a Jew as far going to temple and all that, or the synagogue because your parents go, but then I assume that there is a point where you have to make that decision for yourself, that this is something I believe in, this is what I'm gonna do, and it's not because my parents went, so I'm just gonna go.
Right.
What is there? How did you become a
Okay.
Jew? As far as obviously you've always been a Jew, but as far as on the religious
Understood.
side. Yeah.
And I'll answer that question first in general because it's an important question and an important answer, and maybe one of the biggest differences between Judaism and Christianity, or Judaism and any other religion, but especially Christianity, is that most Jews, whether they are super Orthodox, very observant, very religious, in the middle, which I am, by the way, I consider myself a conservative Jew, and just very quickly, the conservative Jews are maybe rough comparison to your general Lutherans, Baptists,
the
Methodists,
Protestant,
the general right.
yeah,
I would
okay.
say
Okay.
your mid-level Protestants, if there is such a term.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
That's the conservative Jew equivalent. We're going to get more into that, I promise, in a little bit, the more specific denominations and factions and observance levels of Judaism. But for me, to answer your question, the short answer is no. And meaning there was not one point, maybe several points, but there certainly wasn't one point where I felt, really religiously, spiritually convinced, I'm Jewish. And part of that, and I think, I could be wrong, but I think that would be the general answer for the majority of Jews in the world, both America, Israel, and the rest of the world, just because it is so much taught from a young age that this is, a culture, not to say a culture first before religion, but the religion is part of the culture, not the other way around. And so there is no concept, really, in terms of Judaism, of being born again or finding your faith that I hear about, and has always fascinated me about both Protestants and Catholics, but about Christianity in general. And something that I think very few, if any, Jews can honestly say, I truly understand what it means to be born again.